Hello guys, Chroma here. I'm recording a video on 25 NL. It's a live play video, so we'll see how it goes. Easy fold in the big blind versus small blind open. I tend to defend a lot in this situation, but 9-5 offsuit is just a little bit too much. Alright, so we have a poster. I'm gonna assume that's a recreational player because usually regulars won't do that, and there's good reason not to, because basically you're paying 1.5 big blinds to see 6 hands, and this guy just paid an extra big blind, which means this 6 hands he's gonna pay 2.5 big blinds instead. So basically he's just paying an extra big blind to see 2 hands, which is not worth it. This guy 3-bets me, and usually I will defend these kinds of hands, so I'm going to do that here as well to make sure that my opponents cannot just 3-bet me all the time and basically end up automatically making any profits by me folding too much. That being said, I think you can probably overfold a little, since these players at these stakes will tend not to 3-bet too much. So I'm gonna also take a look and see whether that holds true. That being said, like, I'm not gonna get anywhere close enough of a sample to be able to tell such a thing yet. Here I decide not to c-bet because this board just hits every single range basically, except for really small cards, but I'm not too worried about him getting free cards on a board like this. I'm gonna check back again. Clearly I cannot bet for value. Okay, so now it's pretty clear that he doesn't have anything, so I'm actually gonna make an overbet and make him fold whatever he has. Because if I check, we're just splitting, and I'd rather have the fold for myself, clearly. So he open raised the button, I defended. You gotta defend really wide against min raises on the button. Don't go too far, but this is one of the hands I would definitely defend. Easy defend here with King 7. So I'm debating whether to call this bet or not, but I'm actually not gonna do it because I'm probably gonna face another bet and end up folding. So here I'm actually gonna raise with my sort of drawing hand, but also because this hand, like, there's so many bad cards that I cannot continue on that I'd rather just take it down there. And if I get called, I have some outs against most hands. Here I'm actually gonna check raise. Would I do that against better players? Probably not. I would just call and balance my range, but at these stakes I don't think that's necessary, and I'm just gonna go for value. He folds, and that's fine. I mean, clearly I'd prefer if he called, but the fact that he folds means he probably didn't have an ace, and if he didn't have an ace, it's likely he would just check back the turn anyways. Also, there's a flush draw, and I don't want to give him free cards. Same for gut shots. So this guy dunks out at me on a flop like this. I have some backdoor draws, I have a good ace high. He could easily be full of shit, so I'm gonna call here. It's too bad he raised, because now I have to fold. So he bets again, and I'm gonna call again. We pick up a jack. Like, I just don't believe him in this case. Like, maybe he has a queen, but that's about it. But he has pocket sevens, and yeah, against pocket sevens we just have a lot of outs, especially with the backdoors and such. Maybe I actually should have value bet the river, because it just almost means when he checks there, I just always have the best hand, or almost always. Because the queen will probably bet again. From the perspective of a weaker player, because he just thinks he has the best hand. Here I'm gonna c-bet and hope he folds. The reason I c-bet is this board is just very good for the kind of range that I would open on the cutoff, and he probably knows that because I've marked him for some reason as a regular player, that probably means he's played some higher stakes before where I met him. Because these are not my usual stakes. So he checks, and I'm gonna fire about 2/3 of the pot. See if he wants to fold. If he doesn't, then that's basically it. I cannot afford to keep barreling with this hand, because I have no outs, and he clearly has some piece of the board, so at this point it's just, okay, you lost. He's taking his time too, so that's kind of curious. Like, makes me wonder whether he has a really strong hand like Ace Jack or even Queen 10. Usually when people have like a king, for example, they would call much faster. Simply because they know what they're gonna do, and like when they have the nuts, they tend to think a lot longer. So I was basically expecting to bet out like basically every single time anyways. When someone times down and then bets, that's almost always a really strong hand. But I cannot call anyways, so it doesn't matter. Here I'm gonna bet 1/3 of the pot because this board is really dry, even though there is a flush draw. And I would actually like to get called, clearly, since I have a really strong hand. Let's see where he's from. He's from Russia. He's also on this table. And on this one. So that probably means he realizes that I'm not a weak player either, that at least I'm a regular, like multi-tabling. Since this bet is so small, I think it's okay to defend Queen 9. In fact, I think it's profitable. Like, the other option is folding, which would cost us a big blind, and all we have to do by defending is lose less than 1 big blind on average. And I think a hand like this can probably do that. I wouldn't suggest calling much weaker though. So this guy has basically folded everything so far, so I'm gonna try and take his blind if he lets me. And he does. He's also on this table, by the way. Gonna open the 5-2 suited. Take it down there too. Basically, whenever you're trying to steal the blinds, or basically whenever you're attacking the blinds, the best outcome you could possibly get is that they fold. The only exception is if you have a really, really strong hand, but then like, it's still okay to take the blinds. Like, taking the blinds is a big deal. It's a lot of money over the long run. Not gonna defend ace 10 because this guy seems so tight so far. He might be thinking that I'm just stealing really wide, and he would probably be sort of correct. Not as wide as he might think though, from the sample, because you can see here my stats, you can see them probably, but so far I've opened a lot of hands, just because I've been getting cards that allow me to do that. And what happens is they might think that I'm just basically raising way too much. Okay, so here we get a really high board, which means it's very likely to have hit it in some way. I've hit it in a major way, so I'm actually gonna bet it big. Because if he hit it in some way, he's gonna call. He insta-folds though, so he clearly just had nothing. Like, you might think, well, if you bet so big, isn't he just gonna fold? Well, he's gonna fold air, sure, but he's gonna fold that if I bet smaller anyways. Same goes here for the opposite. Like, if he has nothing, he will fold to my 1/3 bet anyways. So if I have nothing, why not make a 1/3 bet and lose less if he does end up having something? So this guy checked the flop and then bet out on the turn. You could think about doing some stuff, but not with this hand. Like, you just have nothing at all. If you're gonna go and get fancy, at least make sure you have like a spade or a gut shot or whatever. Some way of making a good hand. Even though I think this guy was probably full of it there. He could easily have a flush draw though. Like, a flush is very unlikely given that he didn't see bet the flop. A jack is possible but also unlikely on a board like this. So I think he's probably weak. If he 3-bets again, well, I'm clearly not gonna fold this time. Question is, do I 4-bet or do I just call? And that would depend on what I think he's likely to do if I 4-bet. If I think he's likely to call me, then I think 4-betting with ace queen is a very strong plan. If I think he's far more likely to either fold or re-raise me, then 4-betting becomes pretty horrible, because you would 4-bet ace queen only because of its playability post flop. And if he's never gonna play a flop, aka fold or re-raise, then that playability is pretty much useless. The only thing that's useful is its equity, but when he 5-bet shoves, equity of ace queen offsuit isn't that good. At all, actually. If he 3-bets me here, I'm not folding either. Because he's seen me steal a lot so far, and he's already 3-bet me once. And this hand is decent, so... yeah, and he goes for it again. I was kind of expecting this already, so I'm actually gonna 4-bet this one. Because I was kind of expecting a 3-bet anyways. I don't want to make it this large. I want to make it 675. Here I'm gonna check raise. And see, he folds. Like, this guy is probably thinks that he has a read on me that I'm overdoing it, or that I'm looser than I really am, just based on a small sample where I've get better than average cards. An ace-10 offsuit, by the way, has good blockers. That's one of the reasons why I 4-bet that combination. Also, it's almost like I don't really want to call ace-10 offsuit because it's slightly too weak, maybe out of position, so that makes it for a good 4-bet. Like, you often want to re-raise like the bottom part, or actually the top part of your folding range. So would I call ace-10? Maybe, maybe not. So that, like, it's right on the border of being good enough to call or not good enough to call, and that's usually the kind of hand you want to 4-bet weak. If you're gonna have a weak 4-bet range. In most spots you don't want that anyways, but I thought in this spot it was okay because this guy seemed to be adjusting to my play that from his perspective seems pretty loose aggressive or even maniacal. Here I'm gonna bet small again because of really dry board, same here. Okay, so in this one we get called, and now I'm gonna bet slightly more normal. Still value betting. And now he folds. You are gonna get called slightly wider if you make a really small c-bet, but you're also risking a lot less money. So he called the flop and then checked back, or checked again on the river, so not sure if I should try and take a stab here. Ace high is probably calling, so I might as well just check. And he had king 10. That's the worst possible thing ever. But I don't think I could have made him fold that anyways. Okay, so this guy, I think 150 is enough since his stack is so small. I hope he shoves, but he doesn't, and I get a really bad flop. Gonna check and call the flop for at least once. This way I keep his range wider. If I start betting, he might start folding stuff. I'm actually gonna call the rest off too. He bets 25 cents, that's weird. Is he trying to induce me? Well, I already decided I was gonna go the whole way anyways. So I'm actually gonna call here and donk shove the river. And even though that's a 6, I still do it. And yeah. You'll yeah, why not? Like clearly that 6 is not a good card, but yeah, like I said, I was already committed to my plan, and there was so much money in the pot compared to what was left that I cannot fold anyways. So I might as well shove to get value from weaker hands from him, because if I check, he's just gonna check back weaker. So, and if he has better than me, I lose my stack either way, whether I check, call, or bet. Here I'm gonna check back 3 ways. But that's like the second hand where I basically got screwed by the guards. I think I'm actually gonna try and see if he wants to fold it if I make a big raise. Because he looks weak. And let me just see and get called by a 9 there. Nope, he doesn't. Like if he had a good hand, he wouldn't bet that small after I called the turn like for a bet that small. He would have to be worried that I just call again and he just makes one big blind. I actually probably, like if I had a queen, I would have called because I don't need to make him fold, but like you might be tempted to think, oh, you have showdown value, so why would you want to raise? But most of the time, if you just call here, you're gonna see like a 4 or a 9 or whatever, and you're just gonna lose to a really small pair, whereas if you raise, you can actually make that fold. So there's a huge difference in that case between folding and, raising and calling. Easy defend here. You could potentially 3-bet this too. I tend to mix it up. Sometimes 3-bet, sometimes call. This is an easy fold. It would have been an easy call if he hadn't 3-bet. So he checks back, and I kind of want to take a stab and defend my hand somewhat. You should be thinking about what you're gonna do on the river though if he calls, and my plan is to check fold the river if he does end up calling. Because I think if he has a draw, like a club, he's just gonna check back. Because that's basically the hand I can beat when he does call. If he has something else besides clubs, then I'm beat. And like I said, I think he would check back. So here I'm not gonna take a stab. I'm gonna see if he wants to check back again, which he does. And now I'm just gonna bet really small, 1/3 of the pot. See if he wants to call with ace high. If he raises, I'm gonna call because that makes absolutely no sense. Because sometimes, like just like I did against this guy, where he bet one big blind and I raised, just because he looks really weak. So do some people when I bet really small. Like they tend to see that as weakness, and they might raise too. Whereas it might not be weak, it might just be thin value. And the reason I'm betting for thin value there is because I think he has nothing. So if he raises, that's kind of like, did he actually have anything? But then he would have probably played the hand different. So I think if he raises, I have to call just because he's probably just raising because I look weak. So he donks out, and this board I can't do anything about it. Here again I'm gonna bet small, maybe get some value, but also protect my hand. I can get value from hands like king jack, king queen, ace queen. After I check back the flop and I bet so small, I'm pretty sure those hands are gonna call. Even the gut shot might call, like queen 9 or something like that. That's actually double gutter, king 9 then. So this is a weak player. I'm gonna call this. I don't think I would call this against most players, but against a weak player I definitely do. And one of the reasons is because I know I'm gonna flop an open-ended straight flush draw. Kidding, of course. So you could raise here, but I don't see any reason to. Like, why not just invite him in as well and keep the pot smaller when I'm still drawing, and like make it bigger when I hit. I don't see any reason to raise here. Like now I also get his 50 cents in the pot, which is actually very good for me because I'm not worried about him, I'm just worried about making my straight. Same goes here, I don't see any reason for raising. I'm just gonna call and try and make my hand. And I do, but it's a scary card. Like, this is not the best card. The fact that he checks is good though. So here I'm just gonna see bet. He bet out on the king after check calling a small bet on the flop. That doesn't mean he has sides like king jack or anything like that. So I'm just gonna bet and hope he calls me. He doesn't, that's a shame. He insta folded too, so I don't think there's any bet size that he would have called. He might have just had like a flush draw, like a one card flush draw. And that is a very, very large 3-bet squeeze that I'm not gonna be able to call. Since I'm in the early position, I also don't want to 4-bet it because usually these raises against under the gun openings are gonna be pretty strong. Here we flop top pair, top kicker on a very volatile board, so I'm gonna check raise. If you're gonna call here, it's possible, but you're gonna get into a lot of sticky situations with a lot of annoying turn cards. And I'd rather just raise here and make things a little bit more simple. And there we go, there's the bet, and there's my raise. So once again, I'm just gonna bet fairly small, although I don't want to bet too small out of position. So clearly against his button opening range slash continuation betting range on this board, I'm gonna be a pretty big favorite with this particular hand. So I'm clearly gonna follow through here because that 5 does complete the 6-7 straight, but it also isn't that worrisome. Here I'm gonna fold my ace jack, and here I'm gonna 3-bet the guy again. Pretty large because this guy's gonna call anyways. 1/3 pot, try board. Now that is a really bad card. Not only does it complete the straight, jack 10, but also the flush. So I'm gonna check and hope he thinks I'm trying to trick in. If he bets, I'm gonna have to fold because there's basically nothing I beat now. Except for other 9s, but they will check behind. Eight-5, okay. So he actually called my raise on the flop with just second pair. That's pretty good for me. That makes me want to raise smaller top pairs against him too. He probably figures like this board is so draw heavy I can call with my 8, but he probably forgets about the fact that let's say I have a flush draw, I'm almost certain to have two overcards. So even if I have a flush draw with 2 overcards, I'm a favorite against his particular hand. Also, my hand will play a lot better. Like, I don't have to guess whether I have the best hand or not. I have some good backdoor draws, so I'm definitely gonna c-bet this. It looks like I'm c-betting way more than I actually do now, just because I'm getting the right boards to c-bet. So don't think that this is normal for me, that I just c-bet every single hand, because I don't. My c-bet percentage is below 60, just to give you some perspective. Oop, that's my agenda. Popping up right there. So he checks back, but I don't think I can do anything here. He is a really weak player though. But yeah, like he could easily have a pair, and he will call me if he does. So I'm just gonna have to give it to him. Alright, I'll raise. Whoops, I didn't mean to do that. I meant to just min raise. Here I'm gonna fold 4 ways. The games are not that good right now for a 25 NL. Like, this table doesn't even have like a complete weak player. Like, one you're instantly like, oh, that's the mark. This table has him. In this table, same thing. There's not really any true mark. This table has this guy. Well, at these stakes, I would expect someone to always be the weak player. Like a clearly weak player. I potentially should have bet that river with the... Whoops, shit. Sorry guys, I'm just messing up right now. I need to slow down a little. Like, I just accidentally clicked the fold button on my keyboard. Didn't mean to do that. Here I'm actually gonna bet pretty large, because if he has an ace, he's gonna call me, because we checked all the way. And I actually made 2 pair, so I'm gonna make it slightly bigger. Actually gonna bet like 2 times the pot. If he has an ace, he will call me, so I'm not worried about that. And again, if he doesn't have an ace, he probably has nothing since he checked all the way, and he's gonna fold to a 1/3 flop bet too. So I might as well bet big and hope he does have an ace, because that's basically the only way I'm gonna get called. So this guy opens a lot of hands on the button. 80% of them so far out of 10, so that's 8 out of 10. If we include this one, it's 9 out of 10, so I'm not folding. And no, I'm not gonna 3-bet this. It's just too weak. If it were suited, I'd definitely 3-bet. But we need to pay attention to this guy, because we're gonna have to like 3-bet him more. This is a really dry board. Again, I'm thinking of check raising here, but my hand is just so horrible. I would want something to justify doing that. Like a reasonable backdoor flush. So not an 8 high flush. I guess I did have straight draws. But my backdoor flush is a 1 card. So if it were spades, I might have done it. If I had 6-8 of spades. Because the backdoor spade draw is far less obvious than the backdoor diamond draw with only 1 card. Also, if I make the spades, my hand is actually likely to be the best hand, whereas if I make my flush with this 8, like, all he needs is a 9 of diamonds and he wins. But yeah, this guy, I'm gonna pay attention to him if he's on the button, and here I'm in the big blind if he's on the button. So this is gonna be a 3-bet, because this is a pretty good hand, and he 3-bets again for the millionth time, or sorry, open raises. So you could start thinking about 4-betting this guy if he's 3-betting a lot, because we know this guy opens a lot on the button. If this guy knows it and 3-bets a lot in that situation, then we can start 4-betting here. But we don't have that information, so we're just gonna have to be patient and wait for a better situation. Okay, so we have a weaker player opening, or what looks like a weaker player, but that could be variance. And we have a call. I think ace-10 offsuit is just too weak here. I would probably squeeze with ace-jack, not necessarily for value, but as a semi-bluff. Ace queen I would be calling, and ace king I would be raising for value. So we haven't seen too many big hands yet, but that's okay. Because in the end, usually, what decides your win rate is gonna be sort of the smaller slash medium pots. Because basically the big pots tend to evolve around, or revolve around, having like aces versus kings, which everybody plays the same anyway, so your edge is not coming from that situation. Or like flopping a set against a top 2 pair, or something of that sort. And you're just not gonna get your win rate from that specific situation. So the smaller pots are usually more important in determining how good someone is. This guy has been 3-betting me a ton, but ace 4 offsuit is too weak. I'm not gonna do that here. I am gonna stand up to him at some point though, but like I mentioned, I do want something. You cannot just go ahead and start 4-betting him just because he's 3-betting you so much, because you're just gonna get yourself into trouble if you do that. Because just because he 3-bets a lot doesn't mean he has to fold when you 4-bet. Like, he can still call, or he can still shove on you. So you do want to have some sort of decent hand most of the time. Unless you know he folds a lot to 4-bets. Then you can basically do what you want. So I'm gonna place a protection there. And once again. Also, when you keep it small, you make sure that you get called by weaker hands. Like, this is not just for protection, it's also for value. And he actually has 9s. Okay, that happens. I mean, if he just c-bet and c-bet, I probably at least would have called the flop. So the question is here is, do we call or do we re-raise? So this guy has been 3-betting a ton. It's this same guy. So I'm actually probably gonna flat and let him take control. Because since he's 3-betting so much, I would expect, like, I don't know, but my expectation is that he would tend to fold more than usual to 4-bets. And not folding there, of course. Oh, that's such a horrible card. But it might be for him too. If he bets any significant amount here, I do have to end up folding. This is literally the worst card in the deck. There is no worse card than the Ace of Hearts. He actually checks back, so that's a fairly reasonable sign. Or he doesn't check back, he just checks. He could still easily have an ace though. Because if I had ace queen, for example, I would be worried about the jacks and the hearts too. And now he bets the full pot. This is once again really weird. It doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, what hand would you do that with? Are you slow playing? Here I'm betting really small to get called by like ace high. This guy is definitely not c-betting well. Or value betting, because he should definitely value bet that turn. And then I would have called and he would have made more money. But yeah, I'm folding there. Yeah, again, so this guy is not a good player. Like, he should be value betting this turn. It's obvious he has the best hand. And by playing it like this, he makes me bet 25 cents, but I'm betting for value. Keep that in mind. So I think I have the best hand there, and I get to make the bet really small. I'm not gonna take a stab here. You cannot overdo it. Sometimes I would, sometimes I won't. Because if I do it every single time, people are gonna pick up on it. Oh, so here, when he checks again, now I cannot resist temptation anymore. And he folds. Here I'm gonna check back. Too many high cards. It's just too likely that he paired one of these cards. You might be tempted to bet out here, but I think check calling is way better when you have this, like a hand with this much equity. That still isn't gonna be great when he calls your bet. Like if I bet here and I get called, like either I'm up against a flush draw or straight draw, or his pair is better than mine. Here I'm gonna bet 1/3 pot because I don't want him to fold. And it's not likely that he really has anything strong. Also, I don't have the nuts, the real nuts, so I cannot really make a huge bet. He called my turn bet, but I'm gonna follow it up with a river bet because he didn't bet out on the turn, and he didn't bet out, and he did call. Sorry, he didn't bet out on the turn after I checked back the flop. So I think it's likely he doesn't have very much. He actually played that fairly well. I think checking twice with that ace is pretty strong. Pretty good play. I just didn't expect most players at these stakes to do that. But I do like his play. Three bet again, or sorry, open raise again. Cutoff open, fairly small. I'm defending queen 10 all day there. Here I'm checking back. This guy doesn't like folding, so I don't really want to waste money if my hand, like, if I bet, my hand is not good probably. Actually, doesn't, maybe not true against this guy, but I still like to keep, just to keep the pot small. Min bet, I do have a pair. I'm gonna call this, of course. He bets again and now folding. If I thought he was always gonna bet the turn, I'm probably should be folding the flop, because there's basically no turn cards I can keep calling on. But I would expect him to actually give up a lot. So this call I wouldn't usually make, but this guy is really weak, and I want to play as many pots with him as possible. And this hand is actually pretty strong, so, or not pretty strong, but pretty decent. Here I'm gonna put in a smallish check raise. Hope he calls, but he doesn't. So this guy actually doesn't seem like he wants to call anything. He's been folding a shitload of the time when we either make a bet or a raise. So I'm gonna have to kind of probably, in this kind of situation, let him do the betting and bet it for me, because he doesn't seem like he wants to call anything. Every time I see bet against him, he's folded too, so I don't mind that at all actually. Like, I like it when people call a lot of hands pre-flop and then fold the flop almost every single time. Here I'm gonna check back because I cannot get 3 streets anyways, and this kind of keeps my range wide, which is good because it's gonna make him more likely to call. Because if I bet the flop, then my hand range becomes stronger, right? A range that bets flop, bets turn is usually stronger than a range that checks flop, bets turn, bets river. And I cannot get 3 streets anyway, like I mentioned, so I might as well just check back, like he does here. And am I gonna bet or let him bet? So, am I worried about any turn cards? I'm worried about a queen and a jack and a 10. Mostly a queen and a jack. But king high is probably calling, so I think I can value that. Nah, not taking this one to steal. 6 is good enough. Clearly, if he 3 bets, I'm calling. If he squeezes, it depends on his size. That's not a very good flop. Like, this guy probably has some broadways in his range, and then some pocket pairs and some suited connectors, all of which either have a pocket pair or connect to this board in some way. I don't really, I am not sure if he should be donking, but like his range is much stronger than mine on that board, so I'll just give up. Okay, so we need to remember here that we should let him do the betting if we make anything. So again, I should let him do the betting because he folds so much. He's just gonna fold if I bet. So let him do it. There we go. He has kings. That's really surprising, and that kind of makes me think that if I did bet the turn, he wouldn't have folded. So, but how can we possibly like assume that he has a hand like kings in his range when he takes this action? Like we cannot. So you might say, well, you missed value. Yeah, maybe against that hand, but how likely is he, given this action, given that how the way the hand played out? How likely is he to have kings in this situation? Like, I would say very, very unlikely. And about the river, like we could say, or you could say, well, you should raise the river. I very much disagree, because again, this guy's folding to basically everything. So if I raise here, he's only gonna call me if he has a 10-2, and he can potentially have king 10, or is slow playing a flop full house, which is not likely, but it's possible. I'm folding that one. So here this guy raises again, and I'm actually gonna see if he wants to call or fold. I don't really care either way what he does here. My hand is strong enough. If he shoves, yeah, I was just gonna say, like, I don't even mind that one, because I'm just calling because of his stack size. Like, it's not, he's fairly short. What I probably should have done is size my 3-bet a little bit smaller and then actually fold. Okay, so here I'm gonna do something really obvious, which is just 3-bet fairly, or 4-bet fairly small. And he shoves again, and I have aces, and you're screwed. So here in middle position, I really don't want to stack off ace king, so I'm just gonna call and see a flop. And I'm gonna call once on this flop probably. Oop. Let's see if he wants to keep betting. If he does, then I'm gonna have to give it up, of course. Here I'm gonna have to give up too. He does bet again, so I'm gonna give up, but I'm gonna pretend to think for a while. Also, I'm busy here. So he bets really small. This time I do have some backdoor, so I'm actually gonna try and do it. And I take it down. Like, these small bets are almost always weak. However, that doesn't mean that they fold. Just because they're weak doesn't mean they fold. It's more likely they fold, but never be surprised, or you can be surprised, but never underestimate the fact that they can call you down with the 5. Because it happens. That's also why I want some kind of backdoor in most situations. Like, I don't want to do it completely naked. Okay, so basically these tables seem to be breaking down a little. I'm assuming they fill up again. This one's now filled. So let's hope these two guys also fill up, or these seats also fill up. This is kind of borderline. There's still people behind me who can squeeze and such. And calling isn't that great anyways, even if you're guaranteed that nobody does anything fancy behind you. So I think it's better just to fold. He bets minimum again, and in this time there's no point in raising because we have a lot of showdown value. So I would rather take advantage of that. So his range is a lot of suited connectors and pairs, so this board is pretty bad for him. Small blind callers usually don't have a lot of big ace acts in their range, so an ace high flop is going to be horrible for them. So we're gonna 3-bet against the button with a pretty strong hand. He folds and immediately leaves. A very dry board again. Let's see bet small. Both for protection as well as some sort of value, like ace high could call. Gonna check back the turn. If he has ace high, he's checking, so if he bets, I'm just gonna end up folding. The only risk I take is that he has like a 3, and I fold the best hand here, but that's a risk I'm willing to take. I really hate calling in the small blind, so it's about 3-betting or folding for me there, and I don't want to 3-bet fours. They're not strong enough. Okay, so we flop a pretty good hand, but we definitely cannot get for the 3 streets of value here, especially against a tight player who folds a lot on the flop. So I'm actually gonna relinquish control here to him and keep my range wider. Also keep his range wider. And at this point I'm gonna start value betting small to get called by really small hands. Because I'm pretty sure now that my hand's best. And there we go, value gained. My guess is he had like ace jack, apparently he had 8s. So yeah, I figured he had something worse than a king. And that's why I bet small, by the way. If I bet larger, I'm pretty sure that he's not gonna call twice with pocket 8s. Argument for betting larger is that if he doesn't call twice, the first bet is larger, so you're almost making the same amount of money in one bet than you are in 2 small bets. But it's not quite the same, because if we do 2/3, we would make twice. We would make twice. 1 second, I'm gonna play this hand real quick. So I think calling here is probably optimal, or at least better than check raising, just because this guy did bet into 3 people, or into 2 people. And here I have to take a stab, and I have to pretend to have the flush. If I had the flush, I would bet pretty big, so that's what I'm gonna do here too. I'm gonna slightly overbet it. And he makes the fold. That's good. Okay, so back to this hand. So let's see. I bet 53 cents here. If we were to go for 2/3 of the pot, that would be about $1. Actually, $1.06 exactly. So that would be what I make if he just calls 1 street and then folds. If I bet 2/3 of the pot. But in this case, I got 53 cents and 88 cents, which is clearly more than $1.06. So I think against a hand like that, and that's the kind of hand I think he has anyways, if he's willing to call me, betting 1/3 of the pot twice is better than getting 1 street of 2/3 of the pot. If he has a hand weaker than that, he's not calling anyways, or he might call 1/3 pot bet once, but he's not gonna call a 2/3 pot bet with a weaker hand than 8s. The other option is that he actually calls 2 bets with 8s, even if we bet bigger, but that seems unlikely to me. So here I'm gonna 3-bet to $2. This guy is fairly active on the cutoff and the button so far, and this hand plays reasonably well too. Also has the ace blocker. Let's see if we can play this 8-7 suited, if they let me. He min raises. I'm not folding basically anything reasonably remotely close to playable. Two options here, calling or raising. Here too, by the way. So the issue with calling is that there's gonna be a lot of horrible turns, but the issue with raising is that we're not really getting value. Like, if he calls, he's likely to have a better hand, so I'm gonna opt for the call anyways, just because we're in position. That's gonna make it easier post flop, and by post flop I mean after the flop, so turn onwards. He bets the same amount, so I'm gonna have to call again, or I don't have to, but I want to call again. Here we have the backdoor flush again. This guy basically doesn't have anything, because if he did, he would have raised. So that's what I'm gonna do. And here I'm gonna call again. And he has the slightly bigger kicker. Like, that's what I'm worried about, but there's not much I can do. And it works again. Like, he bets so small that I cannot really fold, because instead of queen 7, he could also have 9-7, for example, or pocket 6s, or 5s. So there's basically, he could also have a missed flush, by the way, or some other type of stuff. So I cannot fold for a bet this small, because I only have to be good. Like, what is it? What were my odds on the river? 1 second. Okay, so there's 475, and I have to call 75 cents. That's 6 1/3 to 1. So I have to be winning 1 in 7 1/3, which is like 14% of the time. I'm pretty sure that this hand on this board can win 14% of the time, given the action and how the hand played out so far. Like, if the decision is close, I would have known my pot odds, but this decision was so simple that I wasn't even calculating the pot odds, because it didn't matter. I knew they were big enough to call without having to calculate them. So, not much happening at the moment. Let's see if some other guys play an interesting hand. This one could be interesting. He folds. So here I'm gonna isolate him. Make sure we get to play heads up against each other, because this guy is really raising a lot of hands and he's not a good player, and I have a good hand. Here I'm not folding much in the big blind versus small blind open, so I'm gonna continue that trend there. Here I'm gonna see bet 1/3 because it's really dry. Ooh, very nice indeed. And here I'm gonna try and take it down from him. I do have an open ender, so even if he calls, that's okay. I'm gonna keep barreling. That 4 is pretty bad, but I'm still gonna try and continue barreling. Not too large. Here I'm gonna make a small raise, and he folds to the second barrel. That ace is a good card for me, because that might hit him. Probably not gonna hit him enough though, so we're gonna just stick it in here. Likely win. Yeah, see, that card did improve him, that's what I mean. Not enough though. Oh, one thing to notice, this guy min 4-bet ace-5 offsuit. So this guy limps, and usually that would be enough for me to say that he's a really weak player. But this guy actually is more like a nitty player from the stats that I have on him on 45 hands. I know, small sample, but that means you don't want to raise too wide. That being said, like, clearly ace king, easy raise. Same here. 2.6, I guess. 2.7. So here we have a pretty good flop, and it's sort of dry, so I'm not betting too large. Don't have to bet too large anyways. Pretty bad flop. We got cold called by this guy, I guess. Is that what happened? No, I guess... Oh, I guess I missed the action and I actually squeezed. And anyways, this flop is too bad for me to wanna c-bet. It's a very horrible flop. Here I'm gonna go for a 1/3 pot bet because my hand is really strong, the board is fairly dry, and this guy is pretty tight anyways. Easy fold here. And I say he's pretty tight anyways, that means that he's less likely to call any weak hands. So I want to give him an extra incentive to call some weaker hands by betting small. And by weak hands I mean like ace jack, ace queen, stuff like that. Weak pairs like under pairs and such. Alright, 9-3, not gonna play that. So yeah, this guy's clearly weak. He limps again and he's playing all sorts of hands. This is a very good flop for my range, and I'm gonna show that by betting large. Like, this is what I would do if I had aces. Also, this hand, even if it's behind, still has reasonable equity. So he calls, and he should realize that this flop is really good for me and not for him, because he has no aces, kings or queens in his range. But I do. If he calls again, then I'm gonna have to slow down, unfortunately. He actually check raises. That's something he should never do. Like, it doesn't matter what he has. Basically, he's saying I have a 10, but if he has a 10, I still don't think he should be check raising. Like, his range is so weak compared to mine that he should just never check raise anything here and let me bet. Because I cannot call this unless I have like aces or kings anyways. And you might think, well, that's a reason for him to start check raising. Well, the thing is, I have aces or kings fairly often in that situation. Like the flop that for me, I'm betting the flop with like aces, kings, queens, jacks, and then 10x probably as well. And I'm also betting some hands like king, queen, ace, queen, and then king, jack, stuff like that. Big cards, basically. But on the turn I slow down with some of them. But the big point in that hand is just that my range is so much stronger than his. Like, I have all the nut combos and he only has the 10s. That he should just not do that. But yeah, this is 25 NL, so I'm expecting him to do that with the 10. Probably never as a bluff. But he could actually be doing it with jacks or like a 9 too. Like, just not realizing that that doesn't work. Here I'm gonna bet small again, and then potentially... Should I? Nah, here I'm actually gonna go for a slightly larger bet and a check back on the river. I don't think I can get 3 streets unless I make my flush or full house. I'm gonna bet this because I do have backdoors and like other stuff over card. And he checked and limped, so also really dry flop. Pretty good chance of succeeding in making him fold. Alright, this has been an hour, so I'm gonna sit out after all my hands hit the big blind, or all my tables hit the big blind rather. I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, just let me know. Here I'm just gonna check and fold it. Really bad flop. And he goes with the one big blind again. That's basically forcing me to call. Just because I'm getting 7 to 1 and an ace or a jack is likely to be the best hand. Now he bets bigger once his 7 definitely not a blank hits. Probably means he likes that card. Or he thinks I hate it and therefore bets bigger. Either way, I can't call. Just marking him as a weak, like, nitty player. Alright, let's see if we can actually get some interesting action on the jacks before we finish. Nope, not today. Can't complain though, like I got stacks with aces pre-flop, so you cannot win a stack on every single big pair you get. Alright, so that's gonna do it, because after these hands I'm the big blind. So this was it for today. Signing off.